Good morning, everybody. You know, Chef, it is customary in these sorts of conversations to begin at the beginning, which seems logical enough. How did you get interested in cooking? What are the influences that just shaped your cooking? I actually want to begin in the middle.
Okay.
Because there is one particular moment in this very engaging book of yours, Memoir, by the way, which made me hungry on almost every page, reading it and your description of your recipes and your mom's recipes. But there's one moment in the middle where you're working at 11 Madison Park, which is one of the finest, dining restaurants in America, and a friend of yours comes to you and says, I want you to cater a dinner with Senegalese food. Mm-hmm. And you say, it doesn't feel quite right. And he says, well, do you want to do like Nigerian food? Mm-hmm. And you go, well, that doesn't feel quite right. And so finally he says, what does feel right? Mm-hmm. And you answer,
my story.
Your story.
Yeah, my story feels right.
Yeah.
You know, I think as young chefs, we're always trying to find our voice in this industry, and especially a chef that is a minority. You know, I also come from, my family's from Nigeria, Jamaica, Trinidad, and Louisiana. It's unfair to just choose one of those places when I was so young and coming up, that I wanted to tell it all, and see how I could find my voice in that experience.
Yeah, because you say, I want to cook my own food. I'm Nigerian, I'm America. I grew up on Creole and Jamaican food. I've been working in fine dining now for a long time. And then you say, I want to cook whatever that is.
Yeah.
Right?
So the thing is, like, whenever you open a new restaurant, the press always comes, they're like, so what classification of food is this? And it's like, it's good food. I don't know. Like, I want to do whatever I want to do, And it was funny when I opened this restaurant, I was like, I'm doing Afro-Caribbean food. They're like, what is that? Mm-hmm. And I didn't really have an answer for where they can go and get that specifically. But, the lineage of Afro-Caribbean, by definition, is someone that comes from the Caribbean that has African descent. Mm-hmm. And I think you can't begin to talk about American cuisine without talking about West African cuisine and how that's influenced America and the Caribbean and beyond.
Well, that's, so I'm not a food writer, I'm a political writer, and I've spent most of the last quarter century writing about how Americans are adapting or not to demographic change, cultural change, economic change. And I really thought about that answer. I want to cook whatever that is, because it seems to me that really gets at a bigger question. As you said, we are a world nation. We are an amalgamation of a lot of different influences. I live in LA now. Roy Choi, who is one of our became famous for the Korean taco, he said, I think my cooking tastes like what America is becoming. Mm-hmm. Is that the way you feel?
I think it's the way America has always been. Now there's Instagram, you get to see it all the time, Mm-hmm. So, I think America has always been influenced by immigrants, or I wouldn't even say immigrant, just a collection of cultures. If you think of the original indigenous American food, it was a marriage between, the Pilgrims and the Native Americans. They taught them the 7 sweets and 7 sours, which we still eat today, which are pickles and cranberry sauce. And, the Native Americans taught them the act of preservation, which is smoking. We eat smoked salmon every morning in most places. So it's always been there. But now we have social media just to see it, and it's in our face all the time.
Yeah, there's definitely an audience, right? There are people who want to be exposed to these new combinations, these kind of new flavors, literally, that is making up what America, always has been, and is perhaps becoming even and more so. On the other hand, there is an America that will chant "Send them back" at a rally about 4 Democratic women of color in the House.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Which one do you think is closer to the essence of what America is at this point?
I think they're both the essence of America, unfortunately. I mean, when the First Amendment was written, I don't think they were talking about all Americans, but that was a huge amount of Americans that were not represented in that. But, there's a lot of Americans that do feel that way. And once again, social media and the media in general is just showing what America really is. And it's really unfortunate to see that. I mean,
because let's say the paradox is there are people right below us or right next to us, I don't even know what floor we're on, who will line up for Afro-Caribbean food or for this new fusion.
Did you all eat downstairs
by
any chance? Has anyone been to Kith and Kin?
Yeah.
Yeah? Awesome. So we need to go on TripAdvisor and give us a review.
Yes.
Okay, we need 100 reviews. So I want everybody to say "I promise" on 3. 1, 2, 3. Now don't you lie now, okay?
Yeah. Do you find that, kind of your audience, your consumers, do they want the new experience?
Yeah.
Or how much experimentation do they want?
So it's funny, right? I'll lead this by like when a lot of people are like, how did you come up with the inspiration for this fusion? It is amazing. I'm like, this is Thanksgiving to me. I'm just putting it on a menu and people are thinking it's innovative. But it's Thanksgiving. I mean, we would bring food together, all of our different cultures. We'd have oxtail and we'd have jollof rice and we'd have gumbo, we'd have curry goat, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
So I think what Kith and Kin really allows people to do, so it's two sets of people. One is people that have been inaudible in this industry, like they have not had a voice because there hasn't been a place where they can celebrate their culture while celebrating a special experience. And let me break that down.
Yeah.
You can't go anywhere and get a really good plate of oxtails or curried goat or jerk chicken and also get a crafted cocktail to go with that, and some to like pair a wine with that, right? But you can do that with Italian food. You can do it with French food or even American food. So it's giving people a chance to celebrate their culture while celebrating a special experience, and that's what I love about Kith and Kin. But also, it gives a group of people that have no idea what this food is, and it gives them an environment where they can get the information they need to really absorb it. Because on a plate of food, you can cross nations, you can cross cultures. And it's the only true art form that you actually ingest.
Yeah, you talk about how much information is really encoded in food or embedded in food in terms of cultural understanding. Now, when we're talking about resistance to change, certainly the high end of the restaurant industry, can face that criticism as well. I mean, there's been a lot of scrutiny of it in the aftermath of Me Too. But you talk about kind of the role of race in your experiences really at every turn in the industry. High-end cooking still the province of white men mostly?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Not gonna sugarcoat it.
Yeah. Why?
Well, I think there's a multitude
Especially
of
given
reasons.
the world nature, the world nature of the cuisine.
So there's multiple reasons, right? We've worked so hard to get out of kitchens, and now we're fighting to get back into kitchens. People of color and women, right? So like, that's like the comedic relief of it all. But really, it's not a comfortable environment for us.
Yeah.
I would say the kitchen is much as absolved from sexism as it is racism, because you can mask racist remarks under the hazing, or you got to go through this, or when I was coming up, this happened to me. But you can tell the stark contrast. It may not be as easy as someone slipping the N-word because people aren't that stupid anymore. But it can be the constant overlooking, the constant passing up, the subtle racist jokes.
Well, you described Per Se, 11 Madison Park, two of the highest rated restaurants in the country, but a pretty rough environment in each case.
Yeah.
Yeah. And did you, on the other hand, it's kind of you're talking about the capacity of food to be a bridge. One of the most interesting sections for me in the book is when you're describing working on these cleanup ships in the Gulf with, so maybe explain the story. You're working on ships that were basically deployed to the Gulf after the Deepwater Horizon.
Yeah, you all heard about that little oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico?
Yeah.
So the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, they were paying, I'm gonna be honest, a lot of money for people to go out there and risk their lives, so I signed up. And when I got out there, I was terrified. One, because you open your eyes and all you see is a sea of black everywhere on top of the ocean. But two, I was the only person of color, again, on this cleanup boat. But we had more similarities than we had differences because these, older white guys had come from backwoods Louisiana. So when I was cooking, the first question I got on the boat was, the chef asked me, do you know how to read? Because I have a lot of people like you that come on here that can't read. And I was like, this conversation is over. So, you know what? You cook your food. I'm not your sous chef anymore because I got 3 weeks before the helicopter comes back to get me. So I'm gonna cook my food, you cook your food, and let's just see how that goes. I probably will never be invited on this boat again, but I'm not gonna listen to someone that doesn't think I can read for some strange reason.
Yeah. The guys like the food.
They like the food.
Now, if you would have met them in other circumstances, you probably wouldn't have been palling around.
I may not have cooked for them if I didn't get that opportunity. So I didn't have any recipe books. I didn't plan to cook everything on my own, but I just cooked things that my mom taught me growing up, which was gumbo and shrimp étouffée and red beans and rice. And it were things that they grew up eating, so we bonded over that plate of food.
And you were able to make that connection. Yeah. Now, you talk about in the book toward the end, you say you want to create a restaurant that reflects the diversity of America in every way. in what it cooks and who is doing the cooking, who works there, and who is sitting at the table, kind of the totality of the experience. Do you feel like you've achieved that at Kith?
I'm still striving for it. You know, I think it is, I mean, it's the most diverse restaurant I've ever worked at. So, you know, my pastry chef is Dominican. You know, my executive, my CDC is from Greece. You know, my executive sous chef is, you know, a black guy from Philly. We have so many different cultures represented, and it's not really about me skimming through resumes. Like, does this sound like a black person? Like, it's not, I think that's illegal anyway. But I think people just gravitate, like women of color, people from all different nationalities gravitate towards here because it is a melting pot.
How about the clientele?
The clientele is a rainbow. It's awesome.
It is.
Whenever I get,
you're happy with that?
Yeah. Whenever I get really stressed out because it's hard to, you know, work in a restaurant that's open 24/7, I walk around the dining room and I really get inspired when, like, there's a Nigerian table teaching some white people how to eat fufu and stew with their hands, and they're all like, it's just like it's like a party in the dining room every night, and I get to be the host of that. And you get to teach people different food ways, as well as give people a platform to celebrate.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's really interesting. It feels to me, like, as I was listening to you describe that, that is the fundamental political divide in America today between those who hear what you just said and say, wow, that is great. That is the opportunity that we have as we become this even more of a world nation, integrating cultures from all over the world, and those who kind of look at what you just described and say, hey, that's not the America I grew up in. That's, you know, that is a threat to me and everything that I represent. I mean, that really is the divide. It's almost like whether where your restaurant would be welcomed.
Well, I would encourage those people that say that to come and eat some curry goat and see if they have the same things to say about immigrants.
All right, so let's go back to the beginning, because you grew up in the Bronx, financially struggling family. You had issues in high school and in college. At one point, you were selling candy on the subway to fund your business.
Candy.
Candy.
No,
candy. Literally candy.
It was candy.
It was candy. You were selling candy in college, but on the subway, you were selling candy.
I downgraded.
You downshifted at least.
Yeah. A lot more safe.
Talk a little bit about where your interest in cooking began and what made you stick with it through all of these.
So my mom was a chef, and she wanted to figure a way to raise us while keeping the lights on and not have babysitters raise us, which is easy to happen in New York City. So she started a catering company out of the house in our one-bedroom apartment. And probably against the law, me and my sister became her first two employees. I was 5 years old, my sister was 10, and I learned a lot of like basic French techniques because that is the basis of Louisiana cooking at a very young age, and I really got addicted to it.
Yeah. Your mother was a powerful presence in your story. She believed in some tough love. She sent you to Africa at one point.
Yeah, against my will. So you want to clap it up for her?
Give people a quick sense.
Best mom of the world.
Yeah. Give people a quick sense of that story.
No, she did a great thing for me. She changed my life completely and gave me life. I was veering off on the wrong path, which is pretty easy to do in the South Bronx, and she told me I was going on a 2-week trip to Nigeria to visit my grandfather, and she lied. Because 2 weeks turned into 2 months, and I called her and I was like, hey, my school's starting. Like, summer vacation is up. I got to get back. And she's like, you're not coming home until you learn respect. So she left me there for 2 years. And I learned a lot. You know, I learned to really care about, I wasn't in Lagos in Nigeria. I was in like a small village, Ibusa. And I was able to learn what it really takes to create a meal. Like raising chickens, raising goats, cultivating vegetables. If I wanted a 20-piece bucket of fried chicken wings, I needed to raise 10 chickens. It would take like 5 months. So like, there was a real...
And yet, by the time you left, you were reluctant to leave.
Yeah, that's what I said to her, but I really want to come back.
You want to come back?
I had to act like I had respect
right.
over the phone.
Yeah, it didn't necessarily go that differently once you got back, right?
No, it became home. You know, I was able to we didn't have electricity or running water. There was no like PlayStation or like Nickelodeon. I was able to really use my imagination and thrive in it. And I think that's what has become a huge asset for me to this day.
Yeah, you know, you describe at one point, you say in the story, in the book, my ability to slide through 2 different worlds was my greatest asset in those years. Still true?
Now I just do whatever I want, so it's a little bit better. But I think coming up as like and even a person of color, you have to know how much of yourself to reveal to the world, because there are people that are chanting, send them back, and those people sometimes, unfortunately, are at the top. So you have to mask who you are. I got a Malcolm X hat on right now,
Right.
so like I'm not masking myself anymore.
Great. Let's bring in the audience for a couple questions. You're going to have to pick them because I can't see them in the light. Let me ask you one while we're finding a question. You know, you grew up in the South Bronx. I grew up in Queens. There are a lot of neighborhoods in places like the Bronx and Queens and certainly Brooklyn that are a lot different than they were when you were growing up or when I was growing up before that in the 70s in New York. And there are a lot of young people with money who are now willing to live in cities who are not willing to live there before.
Yeah.
And that's why all of these condos on these few blocks around us, they couldn't have existed 20 years ago because by the time anybody had that much money, they were going to hightail it out of the city.
Yeah.
And a luxury, a high-end restaurant on 9th and Q, is that where you were? 9th and Q? I mean, that would not have been possible when I first moved to DC. Or even this right here. Is this a good thing or a bad thing in the life of cities?
It's a double-edged sword. I mean, it reduces crime rate and people getting hurt. But also it forces a group of people out that have been here, the good ones that have been here for a long period of time. So I feel it's a double-edged sword because when gentrification started happening in my neighborhood, I was like, thank you. Like, because I didn't get beat up on Halloween anymore or like, you know, I didn't have to worry about walking home, but at the same time, it was pushing a group of people out. So I have it's not an easy answer to that question for me because I've lived in these areas as it was happening.
Right. And as you say, there's a positive side, but there is a displacement issue. And I think cities everywhere are struggling. You know, like I said, in the 90s in the Bronx, the problem was not too many people trying to move in.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that was not the problem. Or in the 70s in Queens when I grew up, it wasn't like people were rushing in and it was like, oh my God, how are we going to keep housing costs affordable? It was more like, how are we going to preserve what we have? And now you have the reverse. I mean, cities are dealing with, in some ways, a problem of success, but there's a real cost to existing neighborhoods. When you kind of look around DC as kind of your adopted, hometown, how does it compare to New York in the way that it is segregated economically, culturally, racially?
I would say oh man, that's tough. I would say it's worse. There's a huge segregation in here. I don't know any of my friends that have ever been to Anacostia. Which is across the bridge where all of the people of color live. So the segregation is huge here. And there are definitely some affluent people of color that can afford to live in Shaw and the Navy Yard and the Wharf, but majority of the people of color, it's still Chocolate City for them.
Yeah. Let's go over here. There's a question.
Hi, my name is Jessica Nigro. I'm a longtime DC resident. I'm just wondering what has surprised you about the DC food scene, and if you have some female chefs, not necessarily only in DC, who you really would like to work with or respect.
What surprised me was the diversity of the extremely cultural food in DC. I'm talking El Salvadoria, I'm talking Ethiopia. That really shocked me, and how authentic it is. Female chefs that I admire, Karen Akunowitz in Boston, Daniela at Timber and Call Your Mother Deli, Chef Faulkner, she lives in New York City, May Lynn at Los Angeles, Naisha Arrington in LA, Nina Compton in New Orleans, Mashama Bailey at The Gray in Savannah. There's so many women chefs that are amazing and doing really dope things, so I'm excited about that.
Can I ask you real quick before we go? You got to cook one meal. Your immortal soul is at stake. All right, this is like, what's on the menu?
Gumbo.
Gumbo.
Easy. My moral soul is broken. That heals me.
All right, good. Good to know. We will be back.
All right,
thank you.
Good to see you. All right, thank you.